Hi, this is Grandma, and I'm reading from Crispin, The Cross of Lead by Avi. And today I'm going to start with chapter 48. To review, Bear has been captured by Ayeclif and taken off by the soldiers. Crispin returned to the Green Man Inn, and when soldiers came there, he was able to hide in the secret place in his room. The soldiers have pretty well trashed the Green Man Inn. That's where we begin. I made my way down the steps. When I came into the tavern room, I received a further shock. The tables had been smashed, benches were split, the serving counter was overturned, the tankards in which the ale and wine were served lay tumbled about. Many were broken. Midst the ruin sat Widow Daventry. She was slumped and weeping. Her linen cap lay on the floor. Her hair undone hung down over her broad back. Her smock was torn. Afraid to make my presence known, I stood motionless on the threshold of the room, trying to grasp what had happened. I must have made a sound, for the woman started and shifted her bulk around. She saw me and quickly turned away. But it was enough for me to see the bruises on her face, her red-rimmed eyes, her hollow mouth from which trickled a spike of blood. She gulped for air, and her crying ceased. When I went and stood by her side, she lifted her head, looked at me, raised a hand once, twice, as if to pump up words. None came. It was as if she'd been emptied of all life. "Good widow," I stammered. What happened here?" "Soldiers," she lisped faintly. "From the palace. They're searching for you." "Will they return?" "Oh, perhaps," she said weakly. Though I quickly decided not to tell her I had been in the house, I hardly knew what to say. "If they find me," I asked, hoping she would give me a different answer, "what will they do?" "Kill you," she said. Groaning with the effort, she came to her feet and surveyed the wreckage with a dazed look. When she spied her cap upon the floor, she picked it up and poked her fingers through its rents. "Do you know why?" I said. Disgusted, she tossed the cap away. "Oh, best ask Bear." "Bear's been taken," I said. She swung around. "By whom?" "The soldiers." "When?" Diminished as she already was, my news reduced her even more. Clumsily, she righted a bench and sat down heavily. Her own weight seemed too much for her. "Tell me what happened." I told her all. She listened intently, muttering sacred prayers along with the profanities below her breath. "When I'm done," she said, "may God protect him," and made the sign of the cross. Then her shaking fingers sought her rosary beads. I said, "What will happen to him?" "A loving God will grant a speedy death," she said, squeezing her hands together. Tears began to run down her sunken cheeks. With a hasty, agitated gesture, she wiped them away. I stood there awkwardly, hardly able to breathe. I said, "I heard John Ball cry out that he was betrayed." The woman spat upon the floor. "Beware all men who confuse their righteousness with the will of God. They probably don't even know that Ball was here. It's you they want. I warned Bear." She went back to gazing about the wreckage, as if still unable to believe what she saw. "Widow," I said, "what shall I do?" At first she didn't answer. Then she said, "You can't stay here. It's too dangerous for you and me. They'll try to get Bear to say where you are. But even if they make him reveal where you are, since they already searched this place and didn't find you, they may not believe him. In any case, Bear will try not to say anything to harm you. He cares too much for you." Then she added, "But even the strongest can be broken by torture." "Torture?" I cried. "Tonight, after curfew," she went on, "you must escape from town. In the meanwhile, don't even come into this room. Stay upstairs. Did Bear show you where to hide?" I nodded. "Go on then, that's where you need to be." I climbed the steps and returned to the room. After slipping inside the tiny hiding space, I closed myself in, welcoming the darkness as the only safe companion to my despair. So much bad had happened, and all because of me. Chapter 49. I don't know how much time passed before I heard a tapping on the board that kept me hidden. "Open up," came Widow Daventry's whisper. I pushed the board out. In her hands was a bowl of soup and bread. Grateful, I took the food and began to eat, though I was almost ashamed to be so hungry. "What have you been doing?" she asked after setting down the small candle she'd brought. "Thinking about Bear." "Ah," she said with a sigh. "Well, you might, Crispin. Forgive me for being so angry with you. God knows it's not your fault." She lapsed into silence for a while. "Did Bear ever tell you about me?" she asked abruptly. "No," I said. "2 husbands, 7 children, none alive. And yet I live." She reached out and rested a heavy hand on me. "Crispin," she whispered, "does God have reasons?" "I don't know." Head bowed, she began to weep again. I took her rough hand and squeezed it. It was some time before she could compose herself. Cautiously, I said, "Good widow, can you read?" She looked at me with vacant eyes. "A little. Why do you ask?" "Can you tell me what it says here?" I held out my cross. She took it and turned it over in her hands. "It's from the great sickness," she said. "I don't have to read it. Bear told me what it says." "He did?" She nodded. "It says, Crispin, son of Furnival." I stared at her. "You're Lord Furnival's son." "How can that be?" "Well, who did you think your father was?" "My mother only said my father died before I was born, in the great sickness." She shook her head. "Crispin, for these lords to have son out of wedlock is common." "And Bear knew about me?" I managed to say. "Yes, and he told you?" She nodded. "He guessed it from this cross, and because of what happened to you." She offered the cross back to me. I took it. "What else did Bear say?" She sighed. "He supposed that your mother was attached to Lord Furnival's court, that she must have been some young, gentle lady who knew how to read and write. Bear imagined her some beauty enough to catch the eye of Lord Furnival. Furnival must have brought her, no doubt against her will, to your village. But when she quickened with child, he abandoned her, leaving orders that she be held in that place, not killed, but never allowed to leave." "Because of me?" "Yes." "Why didn't Bear tell me?" "He wanted to protect you." "From what?" "Crispin," she said, "whatever noble blood there is in you is only poison. Lady Furnival, who's the power here, will never let you have that name. She'll look on you as her enemy, knowing that anyone who chooses to oppose her will use you and what you are." "Does she even know of me?" I said, amazed. When the woman said nothing, I repeated the question. If she knows as much as I, she may, said the widow. What do you mean? I cried. Crispin, I cannot be certain, but if the rumor of the time 13 years ago was true, I believe I know who your mother was. She was the youngest daughter of Lord Douglas. Lord Furnival became infatuated with her. It was the talk of the town. Then word was given out that this young woman died. Apparently not. What difference does that make? I asked bitterly. She's dead now. But if Lord Douglas knew his daughter had a son by Lord Furnival, he might make a claim to Furnival's wealth through you. And if Lady Furnival knew of you as well, she would do anything to protect her power here. Your connection gives no honor, no position. What someone fears is not you, but that you will be used. Can't you see it? Your noble blood is the warrant for your death. It will remain so till it flows no more. I stared at her. Did Bear know this about my mother? I did not tell him. Why? He thought of you as his son. Why put a greater distance between you? Crispin, if it's any comfort, you're probably not the only possible claimant. Considering Furnival's reputation, you're probably only one of many. The House of Furnival will want you all dead. But I make no claim. Those who know of your existence fear you will, which is why you must get away as fast as possible and never, ever return to these parts. She reached out and touched me softly on the face with her rough hands. May sweet Jesus protect you, she said before she took her leave. Chapter 50. When Widow Daventry left, I lay back down, and in the closeness of the hiding place I held the cross of lead before my eyes. Though I could see nothing, I stared at it. As I did, I began to see how my new knowledge made sense of the way my mother and I had lived for many years. Her words about my father, few and bitter. Father Quinnell saying she could read and write, but never revealing to me. The way people in Stromford Village looked upon us as different. Ayeclif treating us with such contempt. Her calling me Asta's son, since I was all she had, and that was all she could say. But all the same, christening me secretly with my father's name. No wonder she sometimes clung to me, and just as oft thrust me away. I was her life. She cared for me, yet I was the cause of her destruction. Thus we were foreigners in Stromford, unwanted prisoners. Then the courier had arrived with his document, probably to announce the impending death of Lord Furnival. His protection, such as it was removed. Only did then the words I hear in the forest make sense. And am I to act immediately? It's her precise command. Are you not her kin? Do you not see the consequences if you don't? A great danger to us all. The her was Lady Furnival. To say I had stolen money was merely Ayeclif's excuse to declare me a wolf's head. He sought to kill me because of who I was, not who I was, but who my father and mother were. For me, as Widow Daventry had said, they cared not so much as a rooster's tooth. Father Quinnell must have known the truth, and he was killed. Again, Ayeclif's hand. And Bear came to know it, but didn't tell me. He was shielding me from the poison in my blood. Now he had been taken, most likely to be killed, all because of me. No, I had to remind myself, not because of me or anything I'd done, but because I was Lord Furnival's son. The only question was, now that I knew who I was, what should I do? Because it was clear to me that they had taken Bear to get at me. We're going to stop here today. We are almost at the end, and we have 2 more readings before we're at the end. So I wanted to stop here and think about that. Wouldn't that be hard to know that because of who your parents are, you were being chased and they wanted to kill you? It doesn't sound like Crispin is even excited about being Lord Furnival's son or Lord Douglas's grandson, or that he could possibly inherit that all. Sounds like there are other things that are more important to Crispin. What do you think? Well, we'll talk about that more later. Bye-bye.